What do you think is the defining question of today's generation? Is there even one? In other words, is there one single question that is a driving force behind a lot of our political discourse today and cultural trends and the base philosophy that people are living their lives by? I believe that there is one. I believe that the defining question of this generation is, what makes me, me? Or to put it another way, how do I, as an individual human being, come to a satisfying comprehension of my own self-identity? Now, to be fair, this question has been around for a long time. Philosophers have been trying to answer the who am I question for centuries. And in one sense, there's nothing new about asking that question. But in another sense, there has never been a generation that has approached answering that question quite the way this generation is attempting to do it. So let me give you an example. Think about it. 30 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, how would a person introduce themselves? They might say, my name is John. I'm a white man, 30 years old, and I have a career in computer engineering. And if you're from St. Louis, you have to throw in there where you went to high school. And if you're from Alabama, you have to throw in who you for, War Eagle or Roll Tide. Well, how do people introduce themselves today? It sounds more like this. My name is John. I'm 30 years old. I'm deeply sorry for the ways that I've benefited from white privilege. I am biologically male, but I consider myself to be genderqueer. And my preferred personal pronouns are ze, them, and zir. Things have changed quite a bit on how people view themselves and see their sense of significance. So how does this generation answer the question, who am I? Well, they answer it with another question. Who do you feel that you are? I went and I found a website that lists all the different personal pronoun preferences that people are using. And on this one website, I counted 44 different sets of possible gender-neutral pronoun systems that you could choose to identify with. I saw a news article about New York University's Steinhardt School of Culture, Education, and Human Development. They sent out a survey asking their students to identify their gender, but they had a list of over 30 different genders from which they could choose. Are you agender, bigender, gender fluid, gender nonconforming, gender questioning, and on and on? And then there's a story out of the UK. There are 2 hospitals there that put out new guidelines for their employees. No longer can they call people mother or father. Now they need to use the term birthing parent. They can't use the term breast milk anymore. They have to talk about chest milk or maybe human milk. It's getting so complicated to identify our sense of self. Who can keep up with all the changes? Now, I want to be clear, I am not making fun of people who feel compelled to identify themselves in these ways. Far from it. I'm actually moved to deep compassion for this generation. Has there ever been a time in the history of humanity when people were more confused or more frustrated or more unsure about what makes them a person of significance? We humans have been asking the who am I question for a long time. So 3,000 years ago, King David, a man who should have felt very comfortable in his own skin, he asked this question to God in a prayer in Psalm 8, verse 4. He said, "What is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you care for him?" Here's David, the top of the top, the king of the nation. And he looks to God and he says, who am I as a human being that you, God, would even think about me? Insecurity is a part of the human condition. We all have insecurity somewhere. But in the very next sentence, David answers his own question. In Psalm 8, verse 5, he says, "Yet you have made him a little lower than the heavenly beings and crowned him with glory and honor." King David had to remind himself that God created us, and that the fact that we have been lovingly created and designed by a personal God who made us after his own image, that is where we find our sense of value and purpose and significance and self-identity. This is why we in our church are about to go through the first 3 chapters of Genesis in our next sermon series. As followers of Christ, we need to understand that we can only answer the question, what makes me me, by studying and believing God's word about his creation of us. The most radical, revolutionary thing that we can do as Christians in this generation is to define our sense of self-identity on the foundation of God's loving creation of us. The world will try to tell you that you can only have value and happiness if you make up your own sense of self-identity. The world will try to tell you that if you were created by God, then you're nothing more than a slave. Wouldn't you rather be free to be whoever you think you are? The world wants you to be your own creator, but don't buy it. God's creation of you is what gives you value and dignity and purpose. God made you crowned with glory and honor. And even though each of us has broken that crown of glory by our own sin, God has sent his very own son, Jesus, to restore us by his incredible grace. Your self-identity is a gift of God's love and grace. Don't let the world steal it away from you.